Under the bipartisan infrastructure law signed about 1 year ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was allocated $450 million over the course of 5 years. Martha Williams is the director of the agency. Martha, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So when people think of infrastructure, they're not really thinking about fish and wildlife. So what's the connection between the two?
Well, the connection over time is that think of so many infrastructure projects also have impacts on fish and wildlife. And so when we marry them, we can help communities, we can create jobs, we can have better infrastructure, and we can conserve and protect and enhance fish and wildlife.
So how big of a difference is this funding going to make for your organization?
It's incredible. It's a watershed moment for the Fish and Wildlife Service and for our partners who work on conservation across the country.
You've already started some projects. Some of the money has already been allocated for this year. Can you tell me about how much and how many projects have been started?
So we've already allocated over $95 million and over 300 projects. And every one of those projects involves numerous partners, that they're brought forward by partners, states, communities, and we pull together so many different partners on every one of those 300 projects.
So let's start talking about some of the projects. One of them is restoring sagebrush country. Explain that.
Yeah. So coming from the West, the sagebrush country is really this national treasure, not only because of the special habitat and all the species that it covers, encourages, protects, but it's also, I think, this very Western way of life. So by conserving sagebrush country, we're helping communities, we're focusing on this way of life, and we're really helping to support these iconic species. So thinking of like pronghorn antelope, which are so beautiful, and then a whole bunch of bird species like sage grouse for sure, but a number of songbirds. So it's, goes from big game species to birds to fish and to little amphibians. It really runs the gamut.
But explain that a little bit more when you say that it's preserving a way of life.
Yeah.
That's sometimes not really understandable for people on the East Coast where this really isn't their way of life.
Yes. But it may not be the way of life here, but I think so many of us, to some degree romanticize the West. But it's, when I think of a way of life, I think of people who live on the ground. I think of rural communities, and then also tribes. We've been very engaged with tribes in sagebrush issues as well.
Another area of focus is fish passage projects.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about those and why that's important.
So this has been an incredible infusion investment in fish passage. And so if you think of, there were a number of smaller dams that you may never have really thought about or paid attention to before. But what they do, if you're able to remove them, or if you're able to, say, change a culvert, it allows fish to go through, and fish migrate. And we learn more and more these fish can go where they used to always go. Somehow, I think it's an example of when you give nature a chance, it has this remarkable ability to heal itself. So fish can return where they haven't been for over 100 years, for example. But also when you talk about fish passage, it helps prevent flooding. It helps with water quality. It helps communities. So, for example, I went to one of these projects on the Cheat River in West Virginia and just saw the incredible community engagement around removing a dam and the recreation and the pride in that community that the project represented.
So I'm sure there's a lot of really worthy projects out there. So how do you determine who gets funding and who doesn't?
A great question. So I think this is an example of what we've talked about, the America the Beautiful initiative in the Biden-Harris administration where we really focus on collaborative, community-based projects. So much of this is done through grants, and the projects come to either the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation or the Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and we then think about the biggest impact to the community, to creating jobs, to the resources, and how many partners are involved, and how we leverage that money. For fish passage projects, we leverage $1 into $6 for every project.
So when what ultimate impact, Martha, does this, caring for the nation's fish and wildlife really have on the health of the country?
The why. Why do we do this? I mean, I would argue that nature is so important to us when we allow people to connect to nature. Think of during the pandemic. People went out in droves. It's crucial to our well-being, I think, as people. It's crucial to our communities, and not just on a personal basis, but also, like I said, to prevent flooding, to help in the sagebrush work, to help with drought and fires, to help prevent these enormous fires that are coming across the country. So I think it's giving us a chance and nature a chance.
All right, Martha, thanks so much for being on the program. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.